And of course, people kept coming in. There were the usual customers, officers wanting food, ordinary soldiers wanting a chance to get warm, Reading people buying things. There were also people asking about Sam, top of page 188. Word had got around and people wanted to know what had happened. Mr. Beach came in and Mr. Heron and Captain Betts. I expected that Mother would be back by noon, but she wasn't, and by mid-afternoon I began to worry. I kept looking out the window about every 5 minutes, but still she wouldn't come. I got the supper stew started. It was about all we served to anybody anymore. It began to get dark, and then she came in. She looked exhausted. She slumped down in the chair by the fire. I gave her a glass of rum to warm her up and was about to ask her what had happened. But just then, some officers came in wanting dinner and some drinks, and we got busy. It wasn't until an hour later, when we got the officers settled over their rum and water, that she could tell me the story out in the kitchen, middle of page 188. She had to wait until the middle of the afternoon to see General Putnam. The aides kept putting her off and sending her away, but she stuck it out, and finally she got to see him. He was curt. He really didn't want to take the time. Curt. Real quickly, a synonym. We don't have time for a dry erase right now, but a synonym for curt.
Like tired, or they like no, not that. Like it's like where like he didn't want to. He didn't want to bother with it.
Yeah.
He didn't want to deal with it right then.
Kind of put it off, but very direct and very like, yes, what do you need? Very like.
Like he wouldn't get it over, like.
Yes. Almost bordering maybe rude, maybe. He merely shrugged. You see what the problem is, Tim? Those two men who brought him in have sworn it was Sam who stole the animals. Her voice was slow and tired and hopeless. I messed up. He merely shrugged. She's talking there, right? I'm trying to hurry too much for lunch. You see what the problem is, Tim? There were two men who brought him in and have sworn it was Sam who stole the animals. Yeah, I shouldn't have used a different voice. Her voice was slow and tired and hopeless. Sam wasn't supposed to be here. He was supposed to be on duty with Colonel Parsons at the Betts house. So do you see how it doesn't look good for him? And that was Mom talking just then. But Colonel Parsons didn't care. He always let Sam come over and visit. Still, he wasn't supposed to. Officially, Sam had deserted his post. Why should they believe Sam about the cattle over the other men? Why should they believe me? I'm his mother. I'd certainly lie to save his life. She paused. Go out and see if the officers need anything and bring me some more rum. I'm cold. So they wouldn't let us see Sam. But a few days later, Colonel Reed came in the tavern and sat down with Mother and me. He looked serious. I've been down to the encampment, he said. I've talked with some of the officers there. I'm afraid it looks bad for Sam. Would you like some more rum, Colonel Reed? Mother asked. Her voice was harsh. I'm going to have some myself. And without waiting for him to answer, she brought the rum and poured 2 glasses. Thank you, Colonel Reed said. Why is it bad for Sam, sir? I asked. He sipped at the rum. Here's the problem. Those soldiers Sam caught with the cattle are scared to death. Putnam will simply decide to hang them all as an example. They're prepared to tell any kind of lie about Sam to get themselves off. If it were just Sam's word against somebody else's, well, it might be different. But there are 2 of them, and if they tell the same story, they can't be convincing. He shook his head. And then there's the fact that Sam comes from a Tory family. We're not really Tories, though. Father wasn't. Really, none of us were. Well, that's not the way General Putnam's going to see it. But won't there be a trial, sir? Oh, yes. A regular court-martial. There'll be a presiding justice and a board of officers acting as jury, but we have to face the fact that the board will do whatever they think General Putnam wants. And if they decide that Putnam wants to make an example of somebody, they'll hang. They'll bend over backwards to satisfy him. regardless of the evidence. Well, what can we do? Pray. Actually, there are some others going to be tried at the same time. A butcher named Edward Jones from Richfield, who was caught spying for the British, another man for stealing shoes, and another for desertion, I think. So there's always hope they'll get enough blood out of the others to let Sam go. His war record is good, and that'll help. The trial was set for February 6th, 3 weeks away. There was nothing to do but wait it out. I didn't know what to think. I didn't see how they could find Sam guilty. He had fought for 3 years. He had risked his life. How could they decide to punish him for something he hadn't done? It just didn't make sense. So 2 or 3 times I went to the encampment to try to see him, but they wouldn't let me. They had locked him up in a cabin they were using for a prison, and they wouldn't even tell me which one it was because were afraid I'd smuggle a weapon to him or help him escape or something. After I'd been out there only a couple of times, they realized who I was, so they wouldn't even let me into the encampment. I figured I could sneak it after dark if I had to. They'd cut down most of the trees around for the lumber and the firewood, but there were rocks on the sides of the steep hill which led down into the encampment. I figured I could come down in their shadows, but there wasn't any use in trying until I knew where they'd hidden him. So I gave up for the moment and I waited. I was beginning to get worried about Mother. She'd never been one for drinking very much, just a glass of rum, punch occasionally when it was chilled or sick, when she was chilled or sick, but she'd begun to take it on more. Not that she was drunk all the time or anything like that, but sometimes I'd come upon her standing by herself with her eyes empty and staring and a little glass of rum in her hands. She hardly noticed I was there until I spoke to her. It wasn't much, as I say, but she was changed and it bothered me. Finally, February 6th came. Colonel Reed came in first thing in the morning. I'm going out to the encampment. I'll bring back news tonight. All day long I was so nervous I couldn't eat. I couldn't sit still. I had to keep moving around. And I was glad when people came in wanting food or hot drinks so I could keep busy. Once 2 officers came in and ordered hot rum to warm up with. One of them said, "Did you see any of the court-martial?" "No," the other said. "Why bother? Putnam's determined to hang 'em all anyway." I shuddered, but I said nothing. It was after dark when Colonel Reed came in. He was tired. His shoulders were sagging and his face was grim. He didn't have to say anything at all. I knew what had happened. "Where's your mother?" "She's out back in the kitchen." I went and got her, and she stood in the doorway, saying nothing. "Mrs. Meeker, I have some bad news. They're going to execute Sam." She smiled politely. "That isn't news, Colonel Reed. I've known that for 3 weeks. And that was the story. The man who had been caught stealing shoes would get 100 lashes. The deserter would get 100 with lashes. The butcher, Edward Jones, was to be hung. And Sam Meeker, cattle thief, was to be shot. The executions would take place on a hill near the encampment on February 16th, a Tuesday. The Sunday there before would be a compulsory church attendance. Compulsory means mandatory. You must go. It surprised me that I didn't cry, or I didn't faint, or anything like that. I was numb and nervous and nothing more, and I began making plans. The first thing I did was go to Colonel Parsons. He put me off twice because he knew what I was coming for. But as he was quartered next door to us, he knew he'd have to see me sooner or later, and so finally he did. "I can't help you. The court-martial's decided, and that's the end of it." "Then who can help me, sir?" "General Putnam. Nobody but General Putnam." "All right, then give me a note to give to him, sir." "Why should I do that?" "Because you know Sam didn't do it." He stared at me. "Sir, sir." He put his head down in his hands. "War is hard, boy. Sometimes we do a lot of things we don't want to do. A lot of very good men have been killed in this war, and all we can do is hope that it's been worth it. Maybe it hasn't. Maybe in the end we'll all conclude that. But I don't think so. I think it will be worth it, despite the death and destruction. No, I don't think that Sam stole those cows, but I can't prove it, neither can you. Who knows? Maybe he did it after all. Maybe he had some kind of arrangement with those other men to throw off suspicion of himself. Sam would never have done that. He smacked his hand down the desk. Watch how you address me. I blushed. I'm sorry, sir. He put his hand behind his head and he leaned back. Do you want to know what General Putnam is thinking? It's this. He is thinking he can't win this war if he doesn't keep the people on his side. He's thinking that he can't keep the people on his side if the troops are running amok in the civilian population, raping the women, stealing cattle, burning houses. He is determined to scare the wits out of the troops to keep them in line. And he's thinking that it doesn't matter very much who executes them. Did it stop? Okay. Who executes him? Who he has to execute to do it? So many men have died. So many mothers have wept. So many brothers and sisters have cried. He is thinking that in the long run, if he executes somebody, he'll shorten the war and save more lives. It doesn't matter to him very much who he executes. One man's agony is like another's. One's mother's tears are no wetter than anybody else's. And that's why he's going to have Sam shot. But Sam isn't guilty, sir. The court marshal says he was. But they're wrong. He sat silent. I waited. And then he said, we're going to stop there.